Thank you, Shocks. Congratulations are in order indeed for the 3-0, extending their undefeated run here at Worlds so far and re-qualifying for the finals. I mean, I don't really know where to begin. Freak mentioned it in the post-game there. That was the style of game that we expect to see out of SKT, that we are used to seeing out of SKT. A very explosive game with a 4K gold lead at 17 minutes.
Well, you know, a lot of that has to do with the way that SKT plays around Faker when he comes back into the game. Even if he's on one of these big scaling mages, he is so willing to attack you, to go all in. And you have to play around that. You have to assume that he's going to do that. He sucks in so much jungle pressure. And even then, he was getting a 12-minute Rod of Ages on top of his tier, and he's scaling so well into the late game that it becomes really, really hard to deal with him because of the amount of force he exerts at the center of the map.
See, and that's why I liked Faker over EasyHoon in this matchup. Is like the fights just happened a lot, and you could watch Faker like, yeah, he's just trading flash for flash mid because he has Ghost as a backup. Like, he put so much pressure on the game just by playing Ryze, who's technically a scaler, but who hits power spikes early. So that's where Faker can actually abuse things.
What a scaling champion.
It's so funny because that team composition by Origen was actually very similar to a team composition SKT ran a lot of in the LCK, and that basically has to win by 30 minutes. It lost at 27 minutes to SKT's scaling composition, and I think as we move on in this tournament, if SKT 3-0s the finals, I think they are indisputably the greatest team of all time.
That's a bold claim. We'll have to wait until the finals to see whether or not that claim holds true. Continuing, though, along this game just briefly, Origen, things did fall apart relatively quick for them, but we saw them make the adjustments that we had asked them to make. Switch champion picks up. We saw the Lee Sin come out. We saw Gnar, a slightly more passive, it's not quite Malphite, but slightly more passive and more straightforward champion, and yet things still didn't come together.
Well, the key around, like Jet just mentioned,
tilt.
Yeah, the tilt was a big issue, I think. But the key around running the Sivir Lulu combination, so you play it like a pick composition. You use the massive amount of speed that you have to set up around the dragon, play with vision, and then make picks. You will never, ever should be 5v5ing with that because you have such low damage in a team fight. And they never really got the chance to actually create the picks, to control the vision. And as soon as that happens, then you're going to lose that game very quickly.
And I think, like you were saying, they kind of changed their style. I think their style was the same. They still last picked their top. And I think the only reason we saw so much more focused top was because of Mithy. I think Mithy actually changed the game purposely. He was like, I'm not staying bot lane anymore. Like, Bang is not going to let me punish him anymore. Like, I'm just, screw this. I'm leaving this lane. So he ends up going top with Amazing, and they hold hands, and they get kills on Mar, and they put a lot of pressure on the map. And I think that is kind of the adaptation you need to make during game 1, during game 2 kind of thing, instead of like building up until game 3, like, nah, we'll try it now.
Yeah, and I think it really showed both games 2 and 3 were completely changed with a disastrous move top lane by our team. That was SKT being prepared, but it was Origen committing to the play and failing.
Well, we'll get back to the series in just a moment, but for now, we're going to send it over to Shocks, who is standing by with 2 members of Origen.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Standing by with Expeke and Mithy. And I mean, first off, I really want to thank you guys for talking to me because I know that it can't be easy in a moment like this. So maybe let's start by the series and get that out of the way because I feel like you're going to VOD review a lot of that. And especially maybe what happened between game 1, which was so close, and then what happened after, if you could reflect right now.
Well, what's up? I was not listening to everything. I'm just going to say something else besides the interview. Don't care much. I just want to say that it has been a really, really long year, to be honest. We have started from pretty much Challenger Series, and that I'm really, really happy that this is the team I ended up with because each player from us is a different world, and I'm really happy that we all work or put our best to work together, and from mistakes we try to improve, and I'm really happy from all of them, Mithy, Niels, Amazing, and so on. So thank you very much, guys.
Well,
To answer your question, I think that SKT is really good at punishing mistakes, and I think that the thing that failed on all games, even the first game, it was, I think at some point, shot calling was not perfect, and there was one mistake that was made, and they just capitalized on that mistake, and we were not really able to accept our mistake, and like give someone up, but instead like just committed everyone to a mistake, and then they just snowballed out of it.
Yeah, a very clear read of that game and that series, but I want to travel back to what Peke said. I wanted to get the series out of the way, because in the end, what is to be remembered here is the fact that you guys were in Challenger a couple of months ago. You started this new project. Mythi came back to the professional scene. Just tell me about your year so far, because semi-final, you go out versus SKT, but you go out with a bang.
Yeah, so personally, I have been living a dream since we made it to playoffs. My main goal for this year was to get playoffs of the summer split, and then realistically, I thought like, okay, we're probably like gonna lose against H2K since they have been more established, and it just went on getting better and better and better. And I thought we were gonna never make it out of group stage. We did make it out of group stage, made it past quarterfinals, and even though I'm happy of how far we've made it, I'm still sad about the way we lost, because I think SKT is very strong, but I still think we could have put up a better fight if just small things, you know. I don't know. I'm just a bit sad.
Of course, totally understandable. Well, of course, as said, once again, this has only been your first half a year with this formation. Peke, anything you want to say as final words of you for closing off Worlds?
No, pretty much. That was it. Thanks to the teammates, and well, thanks to all the fans here that go crazy over us. Yeah, thanks. Well, Fnatic is still there, so let's cheer for them, and let's hope they make you proud. So good luck to Fnatic.
Some of that EU pride. Thank you guys so much for talking to me. That was it from Origen, and we're going to go back to the guys at the desk.
Thank you, Shock. Something that should not be forgotten is the journey that this team took. Mythi mentioned it. They went into the summer split hoping to make it to the playoffs, let alone finish second in the playoffs, let alone run through the gauntlet, make it to Worlds, and then end up being a top 4 team in the world in all the 6-month time. That is quite an accomplishment by these gentlemen.
Yeah, pretty damn impressive from Origen to go from that place to get here. And then, honestly, what Mythi said was pretty true. They played SKT tough in a lot of ways. They pushed SKT, even though they got 3-0'd, they pushed SKT harder than any other team that has played SKT up until this point.
Yeah. I would have liked to see more of Game 1, though. Like, the way Origen played Game 1, I feel like was Origen maybe like 85, 90%. The rest of the games, I think they're like sub 50% effort-wise. And I wish we saw Origen stay at that 90% level, where they would keep putting SKT on the back like repeatedly, and the games like aren't, you know, really snowballing from SKT's side.
I mean, I just disagree with you, because I think that when we talk about Origen, then we have to compare it to how they were playing and how they were getting leads throughout this entire tournament. So they were winning most of their games up until today, yet they were still below average in terms of gold. So, in fact, I think Origen played very well, and they overperformed my expectations in Game 1. Game 2 and 3 is more of what I expected to see from the team.
Yeah, things started to fall in line, but I think it's a very valid point. We had this trend developed by Origen where they were eking out these very long, you know, enduring victories, and then they came out swinging here in this best of 3 and really took it to SKT. Now, I think the question then is, was anything necessarily exposed in SKT moving forward that, you know, that whoever ends up facing them in the finals could learn from what Origen did?
Well, we learned that, that we have a Shen support player in Wolf. That was something that he's never done professionally before, but otherwise, for the most part, I have to say no. This is Fager's 4th game on Rise this tournament. One game he played Olaf, another Azir, and another Lulu. So we really haven't... He's just going to keep picking Rise until somebody stops him. And on the easy inside, surprise, he plays Azir and Orianna. So they really didn't show anything in this best of 5, and they have, I think, an entire hand of cards for the finals.
If anything, and this is coming off me saying SKT may be the greatest team of all time, here's where there might be a weakness. Mythi just said in the interview, they're so good at punishing mistakes. Yes. And I think that is completely how SKT plays. Even when they're losing the game, they're still having a chance to win it somehow, because the instant you make a mistake, they're going to get you. But because they are so good at that, they actually don't make many proactive plays that give themselves the advantages. And when Origen was playing passive in games 1 and 2, up until the point they made the mistake by taking initiative, the game was close. So if a team actually executes those game-winning plays, waits until 20 or 30 minutes, gets it, maybe SKT doesn't win in that sense. I'm not saying it's going to happen, Monty. You can calm down.
But
It's
see this tie? It actually is armor, and there is no weak point in it. So we got that going on.
So I hear it's actually vulnerable to brute force. Like if I had a Warhammer of some kind.
Yeah, or like 5,000 degrees of heat might melt it. I think then the question is, or what's scary about that statement really, is that you're basically asking every other team to beat SKT at their own game. Because you're saying that SKT is great at playing to a passive and standard way until the other team makes a proactive decision that is incorrect or in error, and then they capitalize on that.
I think we're getting a little theoretical here, but I think my point is you don't wait for SKT to make a mistake. You punish their passivity by making an uncounterable play.
Okay.
Right? You take the aggressive plays and execute them better than SKT.
Well, it's the weakness of playing a methodical style, is if 2 plays happen back-to-back, once the first play is done, you're setting up what you want to do. You're not really expecting any kind of guess plays or like sneak plays, kind of like how they did in Game 1 when they dove Marin again at the Tier 2 turret. They didn't really expect it. They're setting up the map for mid turret. They're setting up the map for bot turret. And then boom, they get hit top again, and they don't respond well to it because the whole time they're expecting, oh, we just lost something top. Let's go focus on the other side of the map. They won't stay top. So I think those like repeat plays are going to be really punishing, which is what Fnatic does really well. So I'm excited to see if that matchup, goes through in the finals.
Well, that's where you fall back to then the individual matchups themselves. If you are going to attack any other area of the game, you say, well, let us look at all these players individually. But again, we've seen in this series, Marin up a ridiculous amount of CS every single game, as well as a kill or two, and experience of all things, right? You've seen EasyHoon just absorb all of the CS and play the team fights incredibly well. Faker come in, as you mentioned, his Rise play, flashing and blowing flashes on the others, and Bang, I don't know how many missed positions we saw, if any, in this series from his end.
I think Wolf is the only player that I still felt a little disappointed about, especially in that last game. He was getting caught out a little overmuch, but by the same token, it seemed like every time Wolf died, SKT would get twice as many kills in response. So can you really say it's that bad, right?
Right, that speaks to what the casters were talking about in the post-game about how often SKT can find themselves a winning fight in a turnaround, right? So they lose somebody early, but they are able to turn that 4v5 around into a one trade.
Well, they're very good, and the key to them doing this is that they keep track of ultimate and ability and summoner cooldown so well. So when an enemy team will dump everything on one player, for example, in that fight on the bottom side of the mid lane in the river, they still had Rumble ult up, and they just waited for everybody on Origen to pile into a choke, and then they just hit the trigger, come in with the Rise and the AoE, and clean up the play. So when you have such great in-game communication around cooldowns, it allows you to make those kind of decisions very effectively.
Well, as we talk about all the players on SKT, there was one player that stood out in particular and was absolutely clutch in SKT's win today over Origen, picking up 17 kills in 3 games while averaging a 91 CS lead over his main opponent. Now, because of this performance, we're naming SKT's top laner, Marin, as our player of the series.
Yeah, and I think it's no coincidence that the teams that have had the top-performing top laners are the teams still at Worlds. We knew the meta was coming with the champion changes. The lane swap game has been so critical. It rewards team communication as well as having strong individual players, and SKT had all of those things in this 3-0.
Yeah, there's a piece of you that wonders coming into the tournament which teams were these changes going to affect negatively and positively. And as you mentioned, for those reasons, SKT, a team that already can adapt to change pretty easily because they're veteran players who have a lot of experience. You look at Marin himself and how his mastery of the new champions that have come out, and that's the next level of it. Because there are some top players we haven't even seen pull out the Fiora and really threaten on it.
Yeah, probably you were saying something about Fiora earlier, how unless you're a master at Fiora, you just don't want to see someone playing.
Yeah, I compare Fiora top as like the Azir of mid lane. It's like a lot of people can play it like at a pretty meh level, but the second you see someone play it at like 90%, they look awful. They don't get the right vitals. They like repost weird skills like auto attacks. Like who cares about that thing? So when you see a really good Fiora player, it's really obvious. It's not something you just like brush over and you're like, oh yeah, everyone's like that. Same thing with Azir. So I really like those two kind of schools of champion, but I wish there was more like that in the game right now.
Well, that's a note for the designers then. Probably would like more of that. But with this champion, since we have determined that Fiora is such a power pick, we saw Smeb go nuts on it 4 games in a row. We've seen Marin with great showings on it. We haven't yet seen a foolproof solution to the champion in terms of a way to fight against it. And again,
Yeah.
this returns us to pick and bans where we say there's so many power picks. How do you deal with it? There's still nothing out there yet.
Yeah, here is one problem about some of the recent champions. Like Fiora, for instance, we think, what are the weaknesses of Fiora? Well-placed crowd control. But a very well-played Fiora solves her own counterplay because she can repost the crowd control. That's why a well-played Fiora can win almost any matchup in her current iteration. So it adds to the list of champions that I think you have to trade. And that's literally all you get to do. Unless you're playing Fiora well, I think you have a hard time winning Worlds.
All right, well, one more time, we are going to head over to Shox, who is joined by one of the mid lane threats for SKT.
Thank you very much, Dash. Joined here by EasyHoon also for a word after that series and SKT making it to the finals. EasyHoon, you've got a lot more games under your belt now, and you, of course, were started as a famous substitute for Faker, but you've definitely proven your worth, and we've heard before that you really want to prove what you could do for SKT as a team. How do you think you've done in this matchup specifically and throughout the tournament?
그 이진 선수 이제 이전에는 페이커 선수의 후보 선수로 많이 알려졌지만 이번 4강도 그렇고 이번 대회 동안 많은 경기를 소화함으로써 점점 본인 가치를 입증하고 계신데 이전 인터뷰에서 이진 선수가 본인 가치를 더욱더 SKT에서 알리고 싶다고 얘기하셨는데 이번 4강전 그리고 이번 대회를 통해서 그걸 좀 달성하신 것 같은지 말씀해 주세요.
네, 제가 들어야 되나요?
아니, 너
글쎄요, 제가 개인적인 목표가 그 전에 조별 예선 때 저는 제가 나오는 경기를 모두 좀 완벽하게 수행한 거라고 말했는데 솔직히 오늘 경기까지 놓고 봐도 목표를 달성했다고 보진 않아요. 한 70% 정도는 만족하고 있긴 하지만.
So my previous goal during the group stage was to win every single game I play in. So far, even though I am fulfilling that goal, I think I'm up to like 70% of my goal.
Okay, well, you still have a final to play that will be versus Fnatic or Ku. We heard from Bang that he thinks that Fnatic might be the one you end up playing against. What would you think would be a better matchup for you personally?
Maybe Ku will be better because we have known about Ku better than Fnatic. So yeah, I want to match with Ku.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Congratulations for making it to the finals with SKT undefeated so far. Back to you guys, Dash.
I think that's the one last thing we have to consider with this team moving forward to the finals is their ability to play both of these players. And they've shown in this series here they can do it, and they can do it without losing a step. If anything, they gained a step, right? And they finished that third game out even faster. So a huge threat that teams are going to have to take into account when they go up against them in the finals.
I think so. I also hope SKT just starts Faker in the final because I do feel like it just gives them a stronger overall play. If they're really trying to pull some mind games, I think you put in EasyHoon for game one, and if you lose it, you play Faker for the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't play EasyHoon. He's a great player, but it's Faker we're talking about. I think that you have SK Telecom has so successfully shown nothing about Faker. Just by having him play old champions and bringing out this Rise mid pick that he has just crushed everybody on. So, you know, play Faker. You've saved him and you've kept everything under a veil for the entire tournament so far. This is where you get the big reveal. You pull the rabbit out of the hat and everybody is amazed.
It's just a giant mystery at this point, and we have only a week to wait until it is unveiled. Earlier, we opened up our analysts to you, so let's check in and see what you wanted to ask the desk. From CJX, what is the best aspect of each region's meta that you've seen on display at Worlds? Who wants to take that one first?
I think that what we've seen from Europe is really a dominance of the European style of lane swapping at the World Championship. The way that you lane swap, fast push a tower 3, keep your jungler jungling, is something that was not done in Korea, and I can say that. And yet, as soon as we see after those boot camps and all the EU teams go over, that's the one that we see most frequently. So they had figured out something that was very effective, and I really like seeing that everyone else has adopted it and seems to think that's the best style.
Can you take credit for the European lane swapping, Prawley?
Yes, I did all of it. No.
It's actually the Prawley lane swap.
Yeah, it's actually the Prawley. That's what you call it. No, we copied a bit of it and we changed a bit of it. But the best part is, yeah, when Europe went over to Korea, Koreans did steal ours, but they started doing their own like cheese gimmicks inside of this lane swap, which is really, really nice. We haven't seen it yet. Tomorrow, I hope we start seeing the Ku's iteration of lane swaps because it's going to be different than the way Fnatic does it and the way Origen does it. So I'm really excited that the lane swap did start in Europe, I think, but it's still evolving through Korea and through Worlds.
Yeah.
For you, Jet?
I'm going to talk about Korea, and I think their ability to channel farm onto their top laners has been better than any other region. And this was the case before Worlds even hit. They have adapted within the lane swap meta to find ways to get even more farm into top laners. But before Worlds, the Korean top laners had higher gold share, more experience at 15 minutes than under other regions by far, and were generally already starting to play the farm-heavy style big top laners, and it just was shown even more powerfully at Worlds.
Well, and what happened too is we ended up with 3 Korean teams who have incredibly powerful carry top laners, right? And so when the meta just started to tilt on like 5.16 and 5.18 even more into the top lane style, I think it gave the Korean teams a very large advantage because they already were playing, these specific teams were already playing this style. If we'd seen a team like Jin Air, that really wouldn't be the case, right? So it's just these specific players, these specific teams.
Definitely fell as an advantage towards them. Next up, we have Trey1507, who says, what do you think will be the difference between these semifinal teams since they are all so closely matched? Obviously, we just saw SKT and Origen stack up against each other, but this is a nice transition to tomorrow's best of 5 series where we'll see Fnatic go up against KOO. Probably start us off. Thoughts on that
I don't know. The KOO Fnatic. I feel like there's going to be a lot of blood. A lot of blood will be spilled, and there will be no wards to be found at all. So I really hope that's something that's been fixed a bit, is there's going to be a lot more calculated plays tomorrow. I don't expect it, but I'd like to see that kind of change. And I think that's what's going to make the final be really nice, because SKT is really methodical. They do fight around vision. So going against 2 teams that don't really focus around that, I think is going to be a nice little change.
Something we saw from Fnatic against EDG is making very risky yet decisive decisions. And it ended up working for them a lot of times around the Baron area. What we saw from KOO in the semifinals was actually they let themselves get pushed around a lot early game by KT, put up very defensive wards, even within their own jungle, not even river defensive wards, and then reacted when a team overcommitted. So I think because of that dichotomy, we're going to see, like Probably said, really bloody games. When Fnatic engages, KOO will be ready, and they will fight.
I'm really excited for this matchup. I think it's just incredibly even. And I guess what I want to see is more of the KOO that we saw in the group stage with that bloodiness. I'm with you guys, but some more presence in the early game so that we get a lot of these fights and we don't just see the more passive, reactive play style of the KOO Tigers. I also am excited to see what KOO has because they have been very creative traditionally, and I think they will have some weird picks for tomorrow, some weird team compositions, because a lot of times the success of KOO has been born out of their innovation and their willingness to play off the meta, as opposed to having super, super strong teammates across the board.
Well, it'll only be 24 hours until we find any of that out. Now, with SK Telecom's victory in today's semifinal, we are one step closer to filling out our bracket and naming a champion. SK Telecom T1 has claimed the first seat in the 2015 finals, where they'll face the winner of tomorrow's clash between Europe's Fnatic and the KOO Tigers of Korea. And our pregame coverage of that best-of-5 series begins tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. sharp. And since Central European summertime ends tonight, that's 6:30 a.m. Pacific. So change your clocks. Until then, we need to sign off and set our clocks back. But stick around, because in 15 minutes, myself, Kobe, and Monte Cristo will be here to look at all of today's action in a brand new Worlds tonight. On behalf of myself and everyone working hard to bring you the 2015 League of Legends World Championship, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here at Brussels Expo tomorrow.